Well, today I want to talk about how we can build websites the right way because many of us are getting it wrong. My name is Casey. I'm the founder of CL Creative, and I'm teaching you web design and Webflow one video at a time. And today we're going to talk about how you can build in Webflow the right way. Let's jump into the computer and I'll show you how to get started. All right, well, here we are in the computer, and what I want to show you is a section that we're going to build inside of Webflow. And so it's going to be this top section right here. And I think this is a section that's easy for us to get started with that will give us a lot of insight into how to actually build inside of Webflow. So we're going to ignore a lot of these. We will maybe do some videos on how to build each and every single one of these sections coming up. The green here you see is just a component, and we can talk about that in another video. But let's focus on this first section. So what I'm going to do, or what you need first, is you need to wrap everything inside of a page wrapper. And so you need that on the page. The next thing you need to do is you need to put a main wrapper here because you're going to have your nav bar and your footer outside of the main wrapper. So we want everything inside of our main wrapper. It's going to house all of our sections for the website. And we're going to go to settings and we're going to set a tag on that. And we're going to set the tag to main. The next thing that we are going to do, if we wanted to copy what this site is going to look like, is we're going to add a section to the page. So we're going to go up here to the plus icon, and the first thing that we're going to see is a section. We can click that. It's going to put it down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to pull it back up here to the top, and we see that we have a section on the page. Really, this is just a div, but it has a tag of section. You can see that over here. Now, the next thing that I like to do is to make sure that I name my sections. So we want to come in here, and this is going to be the hero section, and it's going to be on the home page. And this is super important because I open up a lot of different websites, and it's just section or it's just div after div. And I'll show you what a div is here in just a moment. But the first thing I want to do is I want to name this section underscore and what it is. So oftentimes I'll start with the page, and I may do a dash, or I may just do an underscore like this and just do hero. Since we already have the home dash hero, I'm going to use the home underscore hero right now so that we won't get our classes mixed up. So we're going to do that. I typically don't add much classes to this section, but you can add a background color to this or anything like that. It's basically a container for me. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a div, and then I'm going to add in another div. And the way that I did that is I just press Command E, and it's going to bring up this search box, and I can click and I can type in div, and it's going to give me a div block. This is just a wrapper, if you will, a block that we can add things into. And so I'm going to create 3 of these just to get started with. And so if we open this up, you're going to see I have a couple of classes that are added to these. Now, you don't have to do this way, but in Webflow, I like to do it this way simply because it is a little bit harder when you have stacked things or deeply stacked things to go back. Now, what I would put here next is going to be a class that I have created, and I call this class Padding Global. And all this class does, as you can see here on the screen, there's a bit of space between where the div is and the screen. That's what this class does. It gives us some padding, and it gives it on the left and the right side. And this padding is controlled through some variables that I have set up. So we can click that, and we can see that there's this variable, and I have it set with a clamp. That's getting a little bit more technical than this particular video, but what I like to do on this particular section, so if we just created a new one for our particular purposes, and we're just going to name this Padding Global 3, because I've already got another one. What I like to do at first is set about 2.5 rem, and I like to set this on both the left and the right side. And if you press Option on a Mac and then Return, what it will do is it will actually set it on both sides. And so you see that we have this here for us. The next thing that we want to do is we want to set up a container. Now I already have a container set up, and so that I can show you what classes to put on here or what to put on here. Let me just create another container. So we're going to create a container, 2. Now, at this point, this container is going to contain everything inside of this section. And so what we want to do is we want to set a few things. We want to make sure that it's always going to be centered. And Webflow makes this very easy for us. You can click this icon here. If you notice that whenever you hover over that, you get the center element horizontal. So we're going to do that, and it's going to put auto on both sides, which is always going to make sure that our container is centered. The next thing that we need to do, because a container is actually meant to contain something, so we need to set a max width for this particular container. So if I go in here and I set a max width of say 90 rem, you're going to notice that it pulls in. So this container is not going to go any more than 90 rem. Now on this container up here, I actually have a different max width set of 80 rem. So if we want to go with the same, max width that I have on the other one, we can go to our container and we can set this to 80 rem. That way all of our sections will match. And by doing this in a class-based system, what's going to happen is you notice that all of my sections end at the same point, at least the ones that I want to end at the same point. And so they are all contained within inside of that 80 rem container. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to set some vertical padding on our section. And so what we can do is we can say padding vertical, and I'm just going to put demo on here for our particular purposes. So we can set some padding here. Now, maybe you're working from a Figma file, and inside of this Figma file, you have some padding that is here. So sometimes that might be 48 pixels or 64 pixels or 96 pixels or even 120 pixels. It really just depends on the design and kind of how you want things to be. For our purposes, we're going to work with maybe a smaller container. So we're going to use, say, 64 pixels. And one of the tricks that you can do if you want to create everything in rem, which is definitely a recommendation, so you can say 64 divided by 16. And you can write that right here in this box. So you say 64 divided by 16, and then you need to type rem. Now this is going to give us 4 rem up here on the top. So we want to make sure that we have 4 rem on the bottom as well. And you're going to notice that this box gets a little bit bigger. Now the next thing I like to do is I like to have what I like to call a component. And so I'm going to do Command E. I'm going to type div. And at this point, I'm going to say what this is. So this is the home hero. So we're going to say home hero component. And this is what is going to control our layout. So if we look at this layout, so we're finally to the layout. Now this, just to back up a moment, this is how I would set up every single section, at least the sections that aren't extending all the way to the sides, but the ones that are being contained. This is how every single section is going to be set up. Of course, it wouldn't be padding global 3 or container 2. It would just be padding global and container and padding vertical. A lot of times what I like to do is come up with different sizes. So it might be padding vertical large, padding vertical medium, padding vertical small, and those are going to be some of those different sizes. So maybe it would be 48 pixels or 64 pixels for the medium, or maybe the large is going to be 96 pixels. That way I have classes that I can just quickly apply to the div blocks as I am working through building this section out. Here we want to have 2 columns, and we want to have some text and a button on the left, and we want to have an image on the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to use grid. I like to use grid in this instance rather than flexbox because I don't have to add so many different properties to my rule set here. So I'm going to click on grid, and immediately you're going to notice it's going to give me 2 columns and 2 rows. Now I don't really need 2 rows, so I'm going to delete that 1 row just by clicking the down button. I'm going to have 2 columns and 1 row at this point. Now I need to create something that is going to contain this content over here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in a div block again, and I'm going to give this a name. So this is going to be my home hero content. Okay. And now I need something that's going to contain my picture or my image. So I'm going to put another div block in, and I'm going to say home hero image wrapper because it's going to be wrapping my image. Inside of this, we can go ahead and put an image block, and that's going to give us the option to now select an image. So let's click replace image, and we're going to go over here to the left, and we're going to find this image that I want to be there. And here's that image right here. So I'm going to grab that image and I'm going to put that there. Now I want to make sure to name my image as well. So I'm going to use the same convention. Home hero image. And I want this to be 100% width. I'm going to give it a max width of 100% as well. Now, a lot of times what I also like to do is come in this home hero image wrapper. I like to use this. Not there yet. I like to use this as in position relative. And then I like to set my home hero image here. I like to set this to position absolute. And this image is going to fill the entire space that is there. Now, if you notice, a lot of stuff messed up here. And that's because this image set to position absolute, though it's being contained because I've set this wrapper to relative, it's being contained. It is not really taking up any space. The only space that's being taken up is what is being taken up by this padding vertical really at this point. So what we need to do is we need to set an aspect ratio to the image. And this is why I like to do this because it helps to control the layout shift that takes place whenever the page loads. So if we go ahead and do it this way, we're not going to experience that layout shift. We're not going to get dinged from in our SEO or anything like that. But what we need to do is we need to make sure that we set this ratio right here correctly. And what I'll do for that is I come to the image and I can go to settings and I can look at the dimensions of that image. So we see our dimensions are 1200 by 1612. That gives us what we can work with for our ratio. So we'll come back to our wrapper and we're going to set a custom ratio. And so we're going to say 12. And if we want to know again what that was for the height, 1612, come back over here and set our height to 1612. And that's going to give us the perfect ratio for this particular image. This image is going to scale properly as we scale our site. So if we come, we compile everything, and we look at this, you're going to see that this image is going to scale properly inside of our site here, which is exactly what we want to take place. Okay. The next thing that we want to do, and another thing you can do is you can set this to 100% as well. So it will just make sure that it fills everything out. The next thing we want to do is we want to put some content over here on the left side. So we have our content wrapper and we can set a heading. So typically in the hero section, you're going to have an H1. So press Command E again, press it a little too slow. Command E, H1. And this is going to put some text on the screen for us. Now, of course, I want to name this. And I have a nifty extension here that is going to provide me with the naming convention that I have so far. This is the potato extension, and it's super nice. And all I have to do is press Shift, and it's going to give me that name there. So at this point, I want to name this based on or I want to name this as my heading. So home hero heading. Now we need some kind of sub paragraph here on the page. And so we're going to come in and we're going to put a paragraph and we're going to name this as well. Home hero. And I'm going to name this subtext. Then we need another paragraph. Paragraph, home hero, and we're just going to say paragraph at this point. All right. And we're going to put in our text. Is your home working against you? Perfect. Here, let me just copy and paste this text from here. And we're going to grab the text from here as well. And copy and paste that there. All right, now we have our content in there. It doesn't look the same. And the last thing we need to do is we need to add a button. So we're going to come and we're going to grab the button. Now the button doesn't look the same at all as this button. I already have some classes set up on the button. So what I'm going to do is just apply that class. So I'm going to say button, and it's going to give us the styling for this button. I'm going to take this text and put it in there. Okay, so now we have our button. We have all this text in here. Things do not look the same as we see here. So how can we make that change? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to organize the content in this section here. And what I like to do in this instance, especially if I want this content centered like this, is I like to use Flexbox. So I'm going to click Flex, and that's going to put everything by default side by side. And that's not what we want. So we want to make sure that we change the direction so that everything is vertical. Now, that kind of gets us back to where we were at, which is really not necessarily what we want. So we need to create some space in between these items. And what I like to do at this point is utilize these items themselves for that space. So we're going to put on this, we're going to put 1.5 rem, which is about 24 pixels. On this one right here, we're going to just do, say, 1 rem. And on this last one, we're going to do 2 rem to really space that button out for us. So now we have a bit of spacing, but we still don't have this content centered. The easiest way to do that is to click back on your Home Hero content wrapper. And then on this alignment tab, you can either do it by clicking here, or you can come to this drop down and just click center. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Now our button is still spaced out. It's taking up the full width because whenever we put this in here, the default is going to be for it to take up the full width. And so what we can do is we can actually wrap this inside of a div. And when we do that, this button is not going to take up the full width. So we can say, we can right click and do wrap in. We're going to wrap it into div, and you're going to notice that it is not taking up the full width now. We want to give that a class, Home Hero button wrapper. Now, in general, I would usually give this a class that is going to be more global, like button wrapper. But in our case, so we're not interfering with the classes up here, I'm going to give it a specific class of Home Hero button wrapper so that I can specifically control it in this particular situation. Now, if we look, we're missing a bit of spacing between these two. So we want to come back to our Home Hero component, which is where we put our grid, and we want to go to the gap. And I like to start with 4 rem, and you're going to notice that that spaces things out nicely for us. Okay, now we need to come in and we need to edit our text to make it the same size as this text. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here on this Home Hero text, and we're going to change the size on it. So right now it's set for the H1 size. I'm just going to set this to the H2 size. We'll get into doing this in a later lesson, but essentially you would just change the size here to whatever you want it to be. Now the same thing for this particular paragraph. If I go back up here and I look and I see, well, what size is this paragraph? Well, it is what I've called text size large. So what I want to do is I want to set this to a larger size. Now I'm going to find my text size large, and it's right here. Now, if you're wondering I don't have this on mine. I just have what looks similar to this. I can just type in numbers. That's because over here in my variables panel, I have some typography set, and I've gone through and I've sectioned out every one of these so that way I can use clamp, but I can also set the variable and set what size I want that particular text to be. So on my text size large, I have this set to 1.25 rem. And then over here in this size panel, I'm able to look at the text size large and grab that here. So this is just an easy way to keep things super consistent throughout your project by setting variables. And we can get into that in another lesson. Just for our purposes, you would want to set this size in here. So now things look pretty similar to what we have here. If we move down to the to the tablet version, you're going to notice that these two sections do not look the same. And that's because this section is now not really mobile friendly. So the next step we have to do is we have to make things mobile friendly. Webflow makes that pretty easy. If we're going to use media queries, they already have those set in, and that's basically what these are: your desktop, your tablet, your mobile, and your mobile portrait. These are going to be your media queries that you're going to use. You can set some custom ones, but we're not going to get into that. We're just going to use what Webflow has here. So what we would want to do is we want to come down to the tablet breakpoint. Now, in this case, it doesn't make sense for these two things to live side by side. You notice the text is getting pushed out of this section. It's getting pushed way down into the next section. And so what we need to do is we need to wrap this text. And we need to just stack these things one on top of the other. The easiest way to do that is you can come over to the layouts panel, and you can continue to use grid if you would like, and just set this to one column. Now we have this one column grid working for us. Or the other option is you can use Flexbox. So you can click Flexbox, and then you're going to do vertical. And we're going to get that text back for us. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that in this version, the image is up top. In this version, the image is on the bottom. So it kind of depends where you want it. Say we wanted our image to match the section above. We wanted it up top. We're going to click on our wrapper that houses the image. And we're just simply going to go over here to the order section. And we're going to click first. And what that's going to do is going to put our image up top. Now, the next thing we want to do is we might want to adjust the gap between these two things because they're a bit large. So maybe you just want to have a 2.5 rem gap at this point. So we want to make sure that we adjust that gap, and we can keep going down the different breakpoints and seeing, is this gap still working for us? Is it gotten to be too much? Where do we need to adjust that? And it kind of depends on the design that you're working with or what you think looks good. So down here, a mobile landscape, I'm going to put that to 1.5 rem. Now you notice that we haven't really dealt with the sides here. And our side here is a little bit less than what we have here. And remember, this comes from our padding global. We set that to 2.5 rem to start with. So what we need to do is we need to make an adjustment here. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to put this to, say, 1.5, option return. And that's going to give us a better look. And I think we can bring this all the way down to the end. At this point, we might want to go back to our padding global and set this to, say, 1.25 rem or either 1 rem, which is 16 pixels. It just kind of depends how close you want it to be to the side when you're on mobile. And now at this point, the only other thing that we need to make sure we do is look at our button. Say, okay, I like the arrangement there. And I think I can go with that there. Now this button's text is a little bit long, so it's going to kind of look this way. You would need to shorten the text so it doesn't wrap like that or make the text smaller. But either way, we've gotten a mobile responsive section. And this is how you build inside of Webflow, how you build a section that's going to be mobile responsive, that's going to look good. We're going to name everything. We're going to make sure that we're using global classes that can be reused, which would be these right here, padding global, container, and padding vertical. And we're going to make sure that we're tying this to the specific page that we're on and the section on that particular page. That way, if someone comes in and they open up our panel over here in the navigator, so we open everything up, we can see what these sections are. We can see that this is our home hero section, and we can see all of the elements that make up that home hero section. The same thing with this video section. We can see all of the elements that make up that video section, and on and on and on. Now, in this video, admittedly, there are a few things that you can do to make this work for you faster, and we will talk about those in some videos to come, as I'll show you how to speed up this workflow and using components and making things work much faster for you. But hopefully this gets you started and helps you understand how to build sections in Webflow in a way that makes it easy for your future self or for another developer or for your client who comes in and is going to be working with this in the future. If you got some value out of this video, if you're still here, man, give me a like, give me a comment down below to tell me which video you'd like to see next.